Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of All in All with Alex. I'm your host, of course, Alex. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Mr. Paul Joel. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Excited to be on your show.
Great, great, great. So, can you tell the people about yourself for a brief second, and then we'll jump into the questions?
Sure. I was uh, born in Newark, New Jersey, and my parents were kind of damaged goods from World War II. My mother was only 15 years older than me, and during World War II, she was like 3 or 4 years old, and the Nazis came in and murdered everyone in her family when she had to witness that, and then she ran out and was eating garbage for a couple of weeks until she was taken in by a couple, a Ukrainian couple who had no children. And my father was much older. He was in the Polish army. He came home one day and found out that his wife and infant son were murdered by the Nazis. And then he deserted from the Polish army and fled towards Russia. And he spent 3 winters in the Russian winter there, sleeping in the snow, no shelter, going from place to place, stealing food, buying food, whatever, just to stay alive. Then towards the end of the war, the Russian army came through and they said, hey, you're in our army. And he was in the Russian army for about a week till he deserted from there too. So I don't know what the record is for most wars. Most armies deserted in the same war, but he deserted from 2 of them. And he met my mother, and my mother was really too young to come to the United States. She was a minor. But after she married him, so she got on the boat. And I thank God I was born in the United States in Newark, New Jersey, every day and missed World War II. And then I never believed in God because I would have had a large family. My mother had a brother. She had 3 sisters. Each of them had 3 or 4 children and husbands, all living in the same house. And they were all murdered by the Nazis. And you know, it's kind of like you hear stories about all this all-knowing, all-powerful, all-loving God. And where was he, you know, for my family? So I never really believed in God. And then to top it off, um, I had 2 things going for me. I had this terrific memory that I didn't appreciate. And I had this great immune system from my father that I knew about. That was very obvious. It seemed like I never got sick. And so here I am. I'm 3 years old. I haven't been to a pediatrician. I never got any of the MMR or DPT immunizations. And I'm not talking. So a friend of my mother, whose son I used to play with, who's 10 months older than me, said, hey, maybe he needs to see a pediatrician. You know, if you read any textbook in pediatrics, you're supposed to be able to say 2 words of meaning by the age of 1, usually some form of mama, dada, and know who's who. So I'm 3 and I'm not saying anything. So, and I remember this, you know, this is 72 years ago. And I was first seen by a female pediatrician who referred me to a male pediatric neurologist. And after examining me, and my parents were very worried I was retarded. After examining me, he said, no, he's not, quote, this is a direct quote from 72 years ago. No, he's not retarded. He's aware of his environment. He'll learn to talk. He's just slow. He's very slow. Like basically, I was dumb as a box of rocks, but not retarded. That was the upshot of this. And what he failed to ask is anyone speaking English to this kid? Okay? Because my parents were speaking Polish or Yiddish or Russian to each other, and nobody was speaking English to me, and there was no TV or radio. So, of course, I'm not going to be able to speak English. But I was kind of labeled as, you know, dumb. So to make matters worse, in first grade and second grade, we lived in an apartment building. And since my parents worked multiple jobs, I was put into this torture chamber called yeshiva, which at that time was for Jewish boys, but now they have it for Jewish girls too. And you're there from 8 in the morning till 5 at night. In the morning, you learn how to read Hebrew, write Hebrew, the Old Testament, the history of the Jewish people, and there's a break for lunch. And then somebody else comes in the afternoon and teaches you what you would learn in public school, reading, writing, arithmetic. And I was the dumbest kid in every subject, and I was very frustrated. And you know, and it wasn't like my parents were running up to say, "How come this kid's getting D's and everything?" I was already labeled dumb. And then we moved to a different part of Brooklyn, Canarsie, where now it was worse because I had to walk 4 blocks, take the Rumsden Avenue bus for 6 miles, walk another block to Yeshiva Rabbi David Leibowitz. So this is 3rd grade, new kids, new school, same result, the dumbest kid in every subject. And this went on for most of the 3rd grade until towards the end of 3rd grade, Mr. Tandler, who was the person who came in to speak to teach the public school subjects, reading, writing, arithmetic, said he needs to see me after class. And I was worried because I knew I wasn't getting some award for being dumb. And they said, look, I don't know what's going on with you, but when I call you in class, you seem to have some idea what's happening. But when you take these tests, you are the worst student I've ever had in my entire teaching career. Don't you study for a test? I announced that there's a test. So I told him the story when I was 3, and that I don't get home till around 6. There's nobody home. I have to grab some food for myself. I got to clean up. I have to do the Hebrew homework. And why should I waste my time studying? I'm done. And he said, "You're not done. Study for the test." So about 2 weeks later, he announced that there was a test in class, and in a loud voice, to embarrass me, he said, "Then you understand English? I don't want to hear about your schedule. Study for the test. There's a test tomorrow. Do you understand English, or is English a second language for you?" And everyone looked at me like I was, crazy. And so I studied for the test and got an A. Who knew? And then to top it all off, all the teachers in yeshiva, when they get the answer wrong, I get hit over the hand and fingers with a ruler. So I got kind of like beaten up a lot, but never complained. And then, so since I was getting A's, and I heard about in public school, you take a test in 6th grade. If you do really well, you make SP, special progress, and you go from 7th grade to 9th grade, you skip 8th grade. And for me, having one less year of school in those days was like winning the lottery. So I talked my way into public school, which was already a big plus because it was only 9 to 3. But I had this teacher, and I'll leave her name out, also with dark hair. And she wasn't hitting me, but she was embarrassing the heck out of me. She hated all the boys, not just me, and loved the girls. And when I get the answer wrong, I'm in 4th grade, so I'm 10. And when I get the answer wrong, she said, "Look, you have to stop thinking with your penis and start using your brain for a change."
Oh,
And I'm
wow.
I'm like mortified. Okay, I'm 10 years old. The female teacher's talking about my penis in class. So finally, I got into 6th grade, and for the first time, I had a blonde teacher, Ms. Hammer. And for the first time, nobody was hitting me, nobody was abusing me. I took the test for SP and made it. And I think in the back of my mind, I was already pre-programmed to think blonde is wholesome, blonde is good, blonde is healthy. Okay, and then you fast forward. I'm now at medical school, and I'm now an intern and resident at Kings County Hospital, where the head of pulmonary is Dr. Harold Lyons, an absolute genius, the smartest man I ever met. Okay, and he had a couple of rules. The first rule was, if you know the patient, you don't need the chart. So there's a hierarchy in medicine. The lowest is the intern, then the resident, the fellow, then the attending. And the lowest person usually reads a note and presents the case, and then they discuss it. But so I'd have 3 or 4 admissions at night, and I'd be up all night. And then the next day at morning report, he would take the charts, and he expected to memorize everything and present from memory. And I was the only one who could do it. I had this terrific memory that I never appreciated, to tell you the truth. That's special. The other doctors would cheat and say, the labs are normal except for this, this, and this, but I gave him everything. And because I was pretty good, and because of his letter of reference, I got to do a pulmonary fellowship at Mass General, Harvard. So I'm there the first day. This is July 1st, 1978. And there's 8 patients on this service that the pulmonary service is following throughout the hospital. And I get there 2 hours beforehand thinking I'm supposed to memorize this. I mean, they expected me to do this at Kings County Hospital, Downstate Medical Center, Brooklyn, New York. This is Mass General, Harvard, Boston. So I get there 2 hours beforehand, memorize everything, and then I walk over to the chart rack and hand the chart to the attending, Dr. Hales. And he looks at me like I'm crazy and says, "Look, I don't know if you know what's going on here, but I'm the attending. You're supposed to be presenting the case to me, not the other way around." Then I told him what Dr. Lyons said. He knew Dr. Lyons. I said, "Look, this will save you a lot of time. You can go through the chart while I present and then write your note now instead of coming back here and writing notes on these patients. Will save you a lot of time." So he did that, and then I handed the chart for the next thing. He says, "You know this one too?" I said, "Yeah, I know all 8 of them." This was like a tremendous memory. And these are not patients who were just admitted last night. They were there, for several days with big charts. But here's the purpose of the story. I finally get to the intensive care unit, and Dr. Hales is on my right. I'm looking straight ahead, and I'm presenting this case. And it's a complicated case. Patients on a ventilator with tubes coming out of every orifice. And I had been there an hour or so beforehand, but since then there was a shift change. So there was a different nurse. And as I'm presenting, I'm looking at the back of this nurse's head with blonde hair, and remember thinking, as I'm presenting, okay, the width of her shoulders and wide, she's not fat. And then she turns around and I see her face. And I stop and I say to myself, "Oh my God, this is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life. What is this doing here?" And I hear Dr. Hales in my right ear say, "Listen, you want to tell me how this patient got on the ventilator? We're pulmonary, that's what we're here for." And the next thought was, pulmonary, who gives a crap about pulmonary? Look at this woman. And I'm very shy with women. I'm no ladies' man. So I looked, and she had gloves on, of course, and I waited till she left the hospital and came back to the hospital. She lived about 2 blocks away from the hospital. I lived about 3 or 4 blocks away. to make sure that she didn't have any engagement ring or wedding ring on, because what's the sense of asking somebody out to get shot down? Okay. And again, I'm very shy with women. So finally, after weeks of this, I asked her out, and we're sitting there in a nice restaurant having dinner in Boston, and in walks Dr. Matt Miller, who was a young attending in the same pulmonary department I was in. And the next day he comes over to me and says, "How did you get her to go out with you?" And I said, I didn't kidnap her the usual way. Like I asked her if she'd like to have dinner, and she said yes. That's how it usually goes. And then he tells me, well, and he fancied himself as a ladies' man, by the way. And then he tells me, well, I've been asking her out for weeks, but she keeps turning me down because she's engaged to this cardiology fellow. And of course, I know his name, but we'll keep him out. Didn't you see the rock on her hand? It's like $40,000. And I looked, okay, and I have perfect vision. And, I didn't believe in God then, but clearly he was helping me, even though I was, too stupid to realize it. So we're going out, and I have no experience with sex with women, and I was very happy that she wanted to wait till we were married and whatever. I didn't want to mess that up. And so eventually I asked her to marry me. This is now November 4th, 1981, or November 1981. So it's years later, 3 years later, more. And she said, well, I'll marry you, but only if you get baptized. And I said to her, I don't believe in God. How's that going to work? And she said, well, we baptize infants, okay? Nobody's going to ask you anything, okay? And so I said to myself, okay, I don't believe in any of this stuff, but somebody pours water on my head and I get baptized and I get to marry the woman of my dreams. It's the deal of the century. So I got baptized on November 4th, 1981. We got married in January 1982, but there really wasn't time for a big honeymoon. So the book starts in October 1982. We had purchased a Eurail pass for 6 weeks to go around Western Europe. And again, I hated the Germans at that time, which is pretty stupid because the people responsible for murdering my family were long dead. Okay, anyone with any responsibility was dead. So anyway, we're in Germany of all places, and Germany is gorgeous. The whole world is gorgeous when you're with Mary Beth. And we're on this bus to see Neuschwanstein. This is this beautiful castle. If you look at my website, http // pauljoelbook.com/, you'll see a picture of it, and you'll see other things about the book. And so we're on this bus ride to see this castle, Neuschwanstein, built by Ludwig II in the 1800s. And suddenly the bus stops in the middle of nowhere at a coffee shop that obviously paid the bus company to stop there. And everyone, including my wife, gets out and goes into the coffee shop, except for me. I didn't feel like I had to go to the men's room or eat anything or drink anything. And across the street is this little church. And, I didn't know the story of it, but the story was that there was a stick figure of Jesus being scourged that they used to use in the Good Friday procession. And everybody agreed it was ugly, so they tossed it in the barn for a couple of decades until somebody realized there were actual tears coming from the eyes of Jesus from this thing. So they put that on the altar and built this church. Okay. And I walk in there, and the church is gorgeous. The ceilings, the walls are magnificent. It's a Catholic church, it has Stations of the Cross on the walls. But your eye is drawn to this ugly thing. And I'm sitting there. There's nobody else in the church. And I get this message. I love you. Your sins are forgiven. As I'm looking at this thing. And suddenly, I believed in God. This is chapter 1 of the book as it happened. Okay, this is a true story. So I'm all excited. I'm like thrilled. And our plan was to check out of this very inexpensive hotel in Munich and get on a train and go to Vienna and sleep on the train overnight. And so I said to my wife as we're checking out, look, why don't we celebrate? Let's go to a nice restaurant here instead of having sandwiches on the train. And let's celebrate. We can take another train. We have a Europass. It's not like we have a ticket for a specific train. So I asked the person at the desk, what's one of the nicest restaurants around here? And he said, well, probably the restaurant at the Four Seasons Hotel. So I said, well, let's go there. And he says, you can't get in there. I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, it's a Friday. Apparently, October 15th, 1982 is a Friday. It's a small restaurant. You need a reservation. Plus, you're dressed in jeans and sneakers and backpacks and so is she, and you need a suit and she needs a gown to get in there. So I remember thinking to myself, this is nonsense. Of course we're going to get in there. I mean, the creator of the universe just communicated with me, and if I want to celebrate, he'll take care of this. So we rushed down there, and there's a doorman in a top hat, and I ask him where the restaurant is, and he says up the banister on the second floor. And then he says, "Look, let me take your backpacks from you. I'll give them to you on your way out." Like basically, you don't allow people dressed like you with backpacks in our lobby, let alone eat here. And I get upstairs, and the maitre d' and the waiters and the piano player are all in tuxedos. The guests are all in suits and gowns, and there we are. And he asked me my name, so I tell him my name. And there's one empty table with a reserve sign on, which, according to my wife, had our name on it, but I didn't see that. And he takes it off, and we eat. We have the meal of the century. And during the meal, a piano player is playing this song, and I asked the waiter if he knew the song, because it was famous. He said, "Yeah, it's a famous song. It's called 'A Man Like You and Me' by Michel Jarre." And the lyrics go, "It doesn't matter if you're king and rich and powerful. We're all slaves to our fate. We're all equal in this world. We all have a fate." And the book is really about the interplay between fate and free will. And that's kind of where the title comes from. And during the meal, okay, my wife has a map of Munich at the table there. And when you fold it a certain way, it looks like there was a J at the Wittelsbach fountain in Munich. The Wittelsbach family was from Sweden. They ran Bavaria for about 600 years. And there's this beautiful fountain there. And my wife's telling me that our first child is going to be James. We weren't interested in trying to have kids at that point. And I said, "Well, what's wrong with John or Joseph? Those are good names." And she kind of poo-pooed it, and, like she usually does, and says, "I'm an idiot. It's obviously James." So we're running to this fountain, okay, to see this. And also during that dinner, there's a whole list of things that she wrote down. St. Bridget of Sweden, 4 founders, whatever. It didn't make sense. Marcus, who was the 34th Pope, the first Pope, by the way, to die of natural causes. How'd you like to be elected Pope? And the first 33 are all murdered. Anyways, so we run down there and looking at this fountain, and there's nothing written on the fountain, but standing there is an old man, an American with a Southern accent. And you have to understand, the fountain is magnificent, but it's on like a circle of traffic with a very small sidewalk. And he's standing there around 11 o'clock, and he looks at me and he says, "My name is James. I've been waiting for you for a long time. It's about time you got here." And he turns around and left. So our first son was named James because of that. And there was nothing written on the fountain. So now we're on a train to Vienna. That's chapter 1 of the book, by the way, okay, as it happened. Okay, this is a true story. Then we get to Vienna, and it's the next day, and it's dark, and we're hungry. And I check into a hotel, and I look at the map, and there's a law in Vienna. You can't have a building higher than St. Stephen's Cathedral, so you can see it from everywhere. So I look in the guidebook for a restaurant, also on the second floor, near the cathedral, so I don't have to ask for directions. And I run over there with my wife, of course, and there's a regular glass door with a wooden frame, and I open the door, and there's a dim light on the second floor where this restaurant's supposed to be, but clearly it looks like it's closed. And I turn around to leave, and I'm locked in the hallway. I can't get out. And there's a law in every Western country since 1921. Look, I grew up in New York City, and I'm a pulmonary fellow at Mass General, okay? What happened in 1921, there was a fire in the Coconut Grove nightclub in Manhattan. And for some reason, the doors were locked, and the people were burned alive. So if the place is closed, and you want to close it for the night and nobody's there, yes, you can lock it. But once somebody can open the door and they're there, you can't lock them in. And so here I am, I'm locked into this hallway. I can't get out. And I know this is something strange here. And I'm tapping on the window, and then a nice man with dark hair comes over, and he can't open the door that I easily open, and now I'm really worried. Then I look back at where the restaurant, where the restaurant is supposed to be on the second floor, and I see a Christmas tree for a few seconds that disappears. And then I see an Easter candle for a few seconds that disappears. And then I see the face of Jesus, and I think I'm going to die. And I'm petrified, and I'm trying to get out. And finally, a woman with blonde hair comes over and easily opens the door, and we run out like scared mice. Now that I believe in God, the next day I buy this book of saints, and I almost pass out. Why? Because when I look at July 23rd, which is the feast day of St. Bridget of Sweden, which my wife wrote on a piece of paper the day before, there's the picture of the blonde lady who opened the door for me. So she may have been born in 1400 and died in 1473, but I swear to you, on October 16, 1982 in Vienna, she was there. So that's chapter 2 of the book. So the book is really about miracles that happened, and it's also about the request of Our Lady of Fatima in 1917. Okay, on October 13th, 1917, and something incredible happened to me on October 13th, 1982. Okay, um, she told the three shepherd children they're supposed to go to the Pope and have him consecrate Russia to her Immaculate Heart in unison with all the bishops. And since that's happened, two popes have tried to consecrate Russia to her Immaculate Heart, but never as requested uh, the bishops. And you think it would be in the Vatican because the bishops meet with the Pope 3 or 4 times a year every year. It'd be so simple to have it done, but it's never been done. And in the book that I first wrote in 1988, I wrote that it's supposed to be in a church in Moscow, not in the Vatican. And then when I rewrote the book in 2023, by that time I was given the name of the church, and it's supposed to be in the Church of the Immaculate Conception of the Blessed Virgin Mary in Moscow. And I'm supposed to be there too. So that's kind of like what the book is all about, what I'm all about. And not in the book is on March 25th, 2019, I'm driving to work to see patients in my office. Again, I'm a physician. I'm both certified in internal medicine and pulmonary. And suddenly I'm confused. I don't know how to drive. And I get admitted to the hospital that day with this god-awful, very rare disease, Hashimoto's encephalitis. So about 95% of my long-term memory and all of my short-term memory was suddenly wiped away. And I had a severe peripheral neuropathy where my feet were numb and my balance was off. My fingers didn't work. I had to use a cane to walk. And despite IV chemotherapy and IV steroids and anti-seizure medicines, I was in the hospital from March 25th, 2019, came home on May 2nd, walking with a cane and basically a moron. Okay, my wife is used to having a husband with a memory. And despite 2 years of chemotherapy and steroids and anti-seizure medicines, nothing changed. So the treatment was stopped. And it was like hopeless for me. Okay, I pray every day that either God would help me or just let me die in my sleep. Okay, because every day was miserable. And then a year after stopping the treatment on April 29, 2022, miraculously, my memory came back. So the peripheral neuropathy is still there, but that's a little bit better too. But the memory is perfect. And the weird part, if this isn't weird enough, when you look at the MRI in my brain, it's unchanged. So the parts of my brain responsible for memory are still destroyed, but my memory is perfect. I can tell you things that happened to me when I was 1.5, when I was 6 months old. You know, it's a tremendous memory. Okay, so again, the book is about miracles, and in a way, I'm now like a living miracle of sorts.
Wow, that's yeah, that is. Whew,
I
man,
mean,
that
there's nobody with my MRI who can have a normal conversation with you and be on your show now, okay, and answer questions. You know, it's impossible.
yeah, and it's crazy to think about. To all of a sudden one day you just don't remember how to drive, you don't remember how to do anything. You be in the hospital for 2.5 months, and then you know 3 years later, all of a sudden now
No,
your
it's a
memory is
miracle.
back where it was. Like it's
It's a true miracle. And here's the other thing: when you have a disease that's very rare, it's listed in the National Organization of Rare Diseases, Hashimoto's encephalitis. The real issue, besides being sick, okay, there's a lot of people who are sick. Okay, I have diabetes also, but there's millions of people with diabetes. Okay, but the real extra added problem is you don't know the natural history and you don't know if any of the treatments work because there's not enough patients to do any randomized controlled double-blind studies. So you have no idea if the treatment that you're getting is the right one or the wrong one or the better one or whatever it is. And I don't know if tomorrow I'm going to wake up and be a moron again. I don't know the natural history of this disease. I'm not on any anti-inflammatory medicines. I'm not on any steroids now. There's nothing to stop this from happening acutely again. So, that's the big worry of this. In addition to, being sick, you have that when you have one of these very rare diseases.
Mhm. Yeah, that's. I mean, is that something that's scary for you? I mean, you
No, I'm
just wake
frightened. I'm frightened to death that tomorrow I'll wake up as a moron again. Okay, and the treatment won't work. Okay, there's no guarantee. Nobody knows the natural history of this disease because there are fewer than 500 people in the history of the world to have this. I might be the only one on the planet right now with this. Who knows?
so
That's how rare it is.
right. So let me ask you this: whenever you had that moment where you forgot how to drive and everything, So from that moment until you got your complete memory back, like, do you remember everything that happened in those 3 years also?
No, no, I
So
don't.
so now you
Now,
remember everything now.
now I remember things from childhood, and yes, I do remember. I remember things that I witnessed. Yes, okay. The memory is perfect. Okay, like I'll give you an example. When I was in the hospital acutely ill and without a memory, I really couldn't really communicate very well with these people. Okay, and they thought that the peripheral neuropathy was from this diabetes that I had. Okay, suddenly for 3 months the sugars were out of control, but I have this thing in my mind that I can't get sick. Okay, so I kind of ignored it, and but I know that I was driving a car the day before, so I didn't have the peripheral neuropathy then, and the peripheral neuropathy from diabetes comes on gradually in years to months. Okay, months to years, whatever. It doesn't come on in one day like this Hashimoto's encephalitis did. So, but I really couldn't communicate it. And I did remember, some of the doctors who took care of me, especially one doctor who was very kind to me, even though, I was kind of looked like a blithering idiot. And I still see him. And I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Cheryl Fry, who is the person who's helped me the most. And I still see her. And it was my wife who kind of connected me with her. So I'm grateful for all these people in my life who helped me. Okay, especially my wife. I mean, it's has to be. It's horrendous for me, but it's just as horrendous for her. Being the wife of somebody like this. And even now, I'm afraid to drive. Okay, I still have the peripheral neuropathy. My feet are numb. My balance is off. A couple of months ago, I fell down a flight of stairs in the house and broke my wrist. So there's still issues. And also, this is still not my brain. The memory is fine, but I can't multitask, and I can't, and it's hard for me to do new things. Okay, so this is like I'm constantly walking around with the feeling that somebody else's brain is in my head, and so if there are several things that are happening at the same time, I got to just slow down and just do one at a time, because otherwise it's too much. It's like over circuit excitability of some sort.
So before you were diagnosed, were you able to multitask with no problem before then?
Yeah, no problem at all. I could present a case and think about this beautiful blonde in front of the ventilator and have a conversation with myself while I'm
Yeah,
presenting. No
that's
problem.
that's true. Yeah, that's true. I mean,
And even like I review cases from home, medical cases in internal medicine and pulmonary and sleep medicine and hyperbaric oxygen, and before, even when I was in private practice, before I got sick, and before, so I would read a case, and then my wife would come up the stairs and she'd start a conversation with me, and I could continue reviewing the case and carry on a conversation with her at the same time. Like I never thought that was anything special because the nerve impulses travel at the speed of electricity. So why can't you go back and forth quickly? Okay. But now it's one or the other. I can't do both. Like it's either review the case or talk to her. That's it. It's a different brain. So I'm grateful that look. I'm not complaining because I'm very grateful that the memory's back and I'm not a moron now. Okay, but still, this is not my brain. This is not what I'm used to. So it's weird. It's weird walking around thinking that there's somebody else's brain in your head, and it's not because like I'm 75 years old. Like, I still only sleep 3 hours a day. Okay, when I met her, that's I'm a pulmonary fellow at Mass General, and so she was working full time in the ICU at Mass General, but she was also taking advanced courses in biochemistry at MIT. So two full time things at the same time, because she's a genius and she could only need 3 hours of sleep like me. And then so years later, so again we're in the delivery room and James is about to be born. And I'm in the delivery room and everything's fine. And I say goodnight to her. And then I figure, okay, I'll walk over to the neonatal unit to see our little bundle of joy. And I'm standing there and there's like 6 or 7 little bundles of joys over there. But there's only one that's awake, my kid. Okay, so I say to myself, okay, this was it wasn't a C-section. This was through the birth canal. They usually sleep 22 out of the 24 first hours, okay? They'll be asleep soon. And then like hours go by and I finally like leave, okay, and I get home and my wife, I ringing it on the telephone, and she's incredibly agitated. Are you okay? Are you in a car accident or something? The hospital's only 15 minutes away. Where the hell were you? I've been calling you all night. And then I just said to her, I was in the neonatal unit watching James and get ready to be up all night because he's going to be just like us. He's not going to sleep. And sure enough, um, he would never take a nap unless he was sick, and he slept 3 hours, 4 hours a day. That's it. Okay. And my wife is the oldest of nine, and her mother and her sisters and brothers all came over to see that he was the new person of the new generation. Okay. And they were thinking that her mother thought we're idiots. Of course, the kid should take a nap. Okay. So she's just going to put him in the crib, and she puts him in the afternoon, and she turns the lights out, puts the shades down, and starts rubbing his back. And she thinks that he's asleep, and she tiptoes out, and then he gets up immediately and says, what's going on here? And she tries to explain to him it's time for a nap, and he says, I don't go to sleep unless it's dark outside. Like, we don't do that. We don't do this, okay? And then to top it all off, so then we had the next son, and if you look at the website, there's this list that my wife wrote. In the list of 7 things, there's Paul and Stephen. So he was named also before he was conceived. And so when he came around, he slept like maybe 4 hours, and not necessarily the same 3 or 4 hours that James slept. So I always used to tell my wife, our household is like the British Empire. The sun never set on the British Empire. Well, the sun never set on our household. It's ridiculous, okay? And then to top it all off, again, I hated school, okay? And my wife liked school because she's always the smartest one in class, and she's the oldest of 9 children, so it was an escape for her not to be the maid, not to be the caretaker, okay, or the other little guys. Mm-hmm. So she's telling James how kindergarten, she's preparing for kindergarten. She's telling him how it's wonderful, it's great, you'll have so much fun. And of course, I can't say it stinks, and I can't tell him my experience with school in elementary school, okay, because you can't give the kid mixed messages, okay. So he goes there, and she drops him off, and it was like an hour later, the kindergarten teacher calls Mary Beth to come to the class, okay. And what the scene is this: he's standing there, James is standing there with his arms folded, and is saying, my mother said this is supposed to be fun, and this is work, okay? And couldn't do anything that she said, that the teacher said, unless my wife was there for the monitor for the first couple of weeks. And I remember being so proud of James and saying to himself, saying to myself, look, this kid is brilliant, okay? The person he trusts the most in the world, his mother, who's brilliant, by the way, is telling him that this is going to be so much fun. And in 2 seconds, he realized, no, this is work. You're going to get assigned work, and you have to do it, okay? Like a slave. And that's what school is, okay? And he figured that out in 1 second. And then, Paul is now, he's a year younger. So the next year, he goes to kindergarten, okay? And he has the same teacher as James did. And the teacher says to Paul, oh, you must be James' brother. And Paul says, yeah, I'm the smart one, okay? Like, there's no problem with self-esteem with Paul. Like, he's an idiot. I'm the smart one, okay? Not him, okay? And I felt badly for him in the beginning when he was born, because his face is kind of like mine, like long and narrow, okay? And my wife and James' face are kind of round. And when he was born, I said, oh, crap, he lost the genetic pool. He's going to get my brain instead of Mary Beth's brain, okay? That's horrible for him. But, after he graduated with honors from Phillips Academy at Andover, and then graduated Phi Beta Kappa from Columbia University and won a Marshall Scholarship to Oxford, I stopped worrying about him.
Oh, yeah.
He's doing okay with my brain, so whatever.
Yeah, doing exceptional. Yeah, oh man, that's interesting. So, you said as far as the book, you said it picks up from when you guys.
It picks up from October 1982 when we were on this trip to Western Europe. So the first day is when I walked into Tears Church, and that's like word for word as it happened. The second day is in Vienna, and there's a list, a copy of the list in the book that my wife wrote. There's 7 things listed with a dash, and then there's a dash that's empty. And it kind of reminds me of when David was decided that David was going to be the first king of Israel. Okay, Anna didn't have any children. She was old, and she kept praying, and uh, she was finally blessed with having Samuel, one of the first prophets, as her son. Okay, and uh, God told Samuel to go to Jesse's home, and there he's going to anoint the first king of Israel. Okay, so Jesse is presenting his sons, and each one is more eminent looking than the other, tall and good looking and smart. And as presents the next son, God is telling Samuel, no, it's not him. So all seven are presented, and it's not him. Like the list that my wife wrote, seven things with listings with a dash, and then there was one empty dash. And so finally, Samuel says, "Do you have any other sons?" He says, "Oh yeah, the youngest. He's out. He's working as a shepherd with the sheep." And so he brought it in, and that was David. And yep, that's God said that's the guy. That's who's going to be the first king. And he basically united the 12 tribes and started the royalty there. But it wasn't until his son Solomon who built the temple. And the temple was like a very important part in the history of the Jewish people and in the Christian church too. Christianity too, because Jesus was a Jew. Joseph and Mary were Jews, and so there's a day of sorrow in the Jewish calendar, the ninth day of the month of Av, and that's when the Babylonians came and destroyed the temple. And then they rebuilt it, and actually Herod kind of tried to rebuild it. The same Herod that told Mary and Joseph, you need to take the child and go to Egypt because Herod's going to try to kill him. And what's left now, then unfortunately, after Jesus died, the Jews revolted against the Romans of all things, and the Romans came in and tore down everything, every rock. And what's left now is the wailing, what they call the Wailing Wall. It's not a part of the temple proper. It was part of the wall around the temple that Herod built, and that's the only thing that's left of it. And Jews pray there. I went there to pray once, and you put like a piece of paper in the crack in the wall with your prayers in it, and supposedly it's the holiest place in Judaism right now.
Okay. So, quick question. So as far as how many chapters does your book have?
Oh, probably about 30. I got to look. Let me take a look. I'll see the book. I'm going to grab a copy of the book and I'll show it to you.
Okay.
Give me a second. Sorry about that. Okay.
No, you're all right.
Here's the book. Okay. And the front of it has 51 chapters. Okay. It's a short book. It's 96 pages with 51 chapters. The front of the book has the definition of love from St. Paul, 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient, love is kind. It goes on. It always protects. It always trusts. It always perseveres. It always hopes. Okay. And the reason for that is because if you don't have an appreciation of love in your life, you can't be happy. It's impossible. Okay. And the back of the book has a picture of a baseball batter. And he's kind of like a metaphor on life. We're all sinners. The baseball batter comes to the plate trying to get a hit. And more times than not, he makes out and he has to wait till he gets another chance at bat. And we try to be good, but we all fail. We all sin. And the idea is to not give up and to keep trying. Because we're not perfect, okay? And we sin. We make mistakes. We say the wrong things. We do the wrong things. We think the wrong things, okay? And I'm not saying we do that all the time, but we certainly do. So that's what that's all about. And the other thing about it that's, to me, interesting is when something happens in a supernatural, supernatural, these events happen, okay? And what I do, you try to correlate them with what you would hear if you went to Mass, okay? What would the readings be if you went to Mass? And so there's 35 uh, readings from the gospel in this book. And what I hope is that I hope people who believe in God buy it and their faith is increased. But I also hope that they find a friend or a relative who doesn't believe in God and hands them the book, okay? Because they'll see these 35 sections of the gospel, and they're probably not used to reading the gospel. It will be an introduction to them. So hopefully it will have some people have the experience that I had as being an atheist and then suddenly believing. That's the hope. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Um, so what? So I know you explained, chapter one and chapter two of the book. So how far does the book go? Like, so I know you said it has 51 chapters, but the last chapter, what year is that?
Okay. Well, the whole thing is really in 1982. Okay.
Oh, okay.
But
Okay.
the last part of the book is the most important part of the book. It's where, again, I'm told that I'm supposed to. In the book, I meet the Blessed Virgin Mary, which is not true. I never met her. Okay, but I'm given the idea that I'm supposed to get the Pope in unison with the bishops to consecrate Russia to her Immaculate Heart. And in the book and in real life, I'm tasked with doing that. And in the book, um, it's to prevent a nuclear holocaust. Okay, the idea being man made these weapons of mass destruction, and if this consecration doesn't happen, the evil one is going to come and set off all these bombs. Okay, so I have arguments. I have arguments with my wife. Okay, my wife says, "How come you don't have burial insurance?" Okay, and I keep telling her, "Well, I don't need burial insurance because if the consecration hasn't happened yet, I haven't been able to get to the Pope to do this." Okay, and if I die tomorrow, okay, the next day there'll be nobody left to bury me. Okay, you and everyone else, will be dead. There'll be the planet will be engulfed in a nuclear cloud from all these nuclear weapons that just went off. So why do I need burial insurance? Okay, because there's going to be nobody here to bury me. Okay, so after the consecration happens, then I'll start buying burial insurance. Okay, but until then, I don't need it.
Okay.
It's a waste of money.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. I understand. Okay. Interesting. So is there anything else about your book that you would like to share with the audience?
No, just again, it's a true story of supernatural events. Um, it's written as it happened, except for one thing that I never met the Blessed Virgin Mary, and it's going to have a new edition that's coming out. Like it actually just came out, and the reason for that is I made a mistake. I left out a scene. Um, in true life and in the book, I'm in Rome, also in October 1982, and I'm walking up the Spanish Steps, and I see the face of Jesus again. Okay, and what I forgot, what I left out is just before that, I saw a vision of the Holy Family with baby Jesus. And that's important because later on in the book, my wife and I traveled to Barcelona to see the church there of the Sacred Family. And an important thing happens, and there's really no reason for us to go there except that I saw this vision of the Holy Family in Rome. Okay, so it kind of explains the book a little bit more. I try to be accurate, okay, and so that's being corrected in the edition that's coming right out. There's one that's out right now, and again, if you're interested in learning about the book, please read the Amazon book review by Stacy Cellini. It summarizes everything, and she gets everything about it. And again, it's in my website, http //colon // You can read it right there. And it has the pictures of Neuschwanstein, has the pictures of other things from the book, um,
Okay.
and some excerpts, and you can buy the book on that website also.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. So I feel like you pretty much um gave a deep insight into your life and your book. Basically answering pretty much the questions that I had. Really to kind of go into detail. So I feel like that pretty much covers everything. You went into the book in depth. You noted the website the way they can go and check out the book or learn about you, things in that nature. So I'll also put those links in the description. That way people are able to just go there and click on it. They don't have to worry about typing it in. They can
Oh,
get there faster.
that'd be wonderful. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. And again, if you can give me at some point, give me a copy of this interview, whatever you put out, so I can see it also.
Oh yeah, yes sir, definitely. So for everybody that's watching, thank you guys for tuning in. You guys just watched another episode of All in All with Alex with the very special guest, Mr. Paul Joel, and we'll see you guys on the next